Shoes like this are designed to help people like this run faster than anybody else. But what if Eliud Kipchoge was as big and heavy and slow as me? There'd be two questions. One, are we related? Two, does this still help? Mr. Kipchoge refused to double his body weight, grow 12 inches and then participate in the video. So I'm gonna have to wear these myself to see if they help an average runner to go a bit faster and maybe race a bit faster.
So the Nike Air Zoom Alpha Fly Next Percent 2 is not Nike having a laugh at the expense of Elon Musk and the way he names his children. It's this. Nike says it will shave time off your personal records and has the greatest energy return of all their shoes. They also call it a rocket ship, which does make me think they might just be trolling Elon Musk.
So the hope is these will make a really big difference, and they should, because they cost almost £300, and I'm told at my weight I'll be lucky to get 100 miles out of them. As a mode of transport, they're so inefficient we might get some eco-warriors turn up and glue themselves to the track.
So I wanted to put the Alpha Fly on my foot with it still fresh in my mind how my everyday running shoe feels. So I'm going to do a few laps here in my Ultra Escalante. It is very, very different to the Nike, but perhaps one of the reasons why this will help me go faster is because this is my regular trainer.
Before I set off, I'm just going to hide these so they don't get stolen while I'm running. Also, I said they were expensive. Turns out they come with a free bag, so bargain after all.
A brief history of my running. I did not start until I was in my mid-30s and far too fat, so fat and heavy that when I tried to run, every joint in my body hurt. I thought perhaps I'm just not designed to run, it's just not something my body's meant to do. And then I wondered if actually what my body was not meant to do was consume Ben & Jerry's for breakfast and weigh the same as a small car. So I lost weight, and at the same time read the book Born to Run, which made me go out and buy these. As a result, I effectively learnt to run going incredibly slowly, but in shoes that left my foot to work as nature intended. These are about as close to running barefoot as you can get. And I still run in these occasionally. But over the last 10 years or so, I have transitioned to more traditional looking shoes, but which actually still have a lot in common with these. Minimal support to my foot, a large amount of room for my foot to work properly, and zero drop between toe and heel. My foot is flat to the floor. Those early joint pain problems that I had never came back because they're typically associated with people landing with high impact, often on the heel. And while that's a running style that many traditional shoes almost encourage you to try and get away with, you simply can't do it in something like this. If you land on your heel, it hurts, so you run the way the foot was supposed to run. So I've gone from my mid-30s, where jogging for 30 seconds caused me pain, to now almost 50 and able to comfortably run under 20 minutes for a 5k, right the way through to 100k ultramarathons, and do so with feet that are pretty healthy.
Okay, 3 laps, just over 1 kilometre, 1200 metres. Bang on, 4 minute 15 kilometre pace, and it felt normal. Okay, shoe change. These felt brilliant and I love them. That's why I run in them all the time. The hole's quite tight. I tell you, this hole's even tighter. I'm in. It feels nice inside.
That's what she said.
They feel so stupid. Why am I walking like this? Okay, they feel completely insane. The heel feels a bit narrow, but I shouldn't be on my heels. And when I come up onto my toes, like there's a point where they tip me forward, which I guess is kind of the idea maybe. That they feel like they just permanently want to be going in this direction. It almost feels like I'm on a trampoline or something. They're nuts. Okay, let's run.
So given that this is so far removed from what got me to being an okay runner in the first place, and most importantly did so injury-free, why did I buy a shoe that looks like, I mean, if it was a car, it would be parked outside McDonald's at 11 p.m. on a Friday night while people called Gary discussed how big a spoiler you could fit on it. So until recently, I had zero interest in these modern super shoes. Aside from not being what I'm used to, they are designed quite specifically to help elite runners do elite running, and I'm not Eliud Kipchoge. I'm a whole foot taller and 50 kilos heavier, not to mention way, way slower. My best 5k time is 19 minutes. He runs 5k closer to 14 minutes, 8 times in a row on his way to a 2-hour marathon. We are both running but we are not the same. Nike did not have me in mind when they made this, and so I wrote it off as not for me. But then I went and got a really comprehensive running analysis done. Actually, my wife Jenna got the analysis because she's brand new to running and looking to do a 100k ultra this year, so I wanted to check that she had no running issues. And I got myself looked at while there. And what I was told was really interesting. It turns out, as I hoped, that probably because of the way I learned to run, my feet are good and my running style is too. I don't suffer with my foot rolling in or outwards. I don't land on my heel. I push off correctly. My feet are strong and well developed. Simply, this worked. So it was interesting to be told by Andy, who did our analysis, that this might well work at making me faster because of what I learned to run in. Basically, this was designed to be landed on with your midfoot, as I've learned to do, absorb the impact of that landing, which contributes to fatigue over time, and then use its fancy carbon fiber plate to spring you forwards, so you don't lose any momentum from that cushioning. But that's pretty much all it's designed to do. If you had a weak foot that has spent years in overly supportive shoes and never really been allowed to work properly, all this spongy cushioning, 4 centimeters of deep foam at the back here, under an unstable foot that rolls around would just be a nightmare to try and run on. But for me, it might offer a huge advantage.
That was cool. So on the first lap, that giant forefoot felt horrible. It felt like I was running on one of those things that you walk in the snow with. It's like a tennis racket. Snowshoes? Snow rackets? Whatever. And it sounded clumpy. It sounded... Second lap, I kind of thought, oh, actually, I get it. It's like kind of third lap, and now I finished, so I could just carry on running. I did 4:10, but ignore that, I'm warming up, that makes no difference. It's how I felt at the end. It's weird because you'd think that because they're so squidgy they would absorb all the energy, but they seem to be squidgy and not absorb all the... It's very hard to explain. I need to go race.
Before we get to the race that I did 3 days after that track session, the big problem I have with running is that because of my size, my weight, I get slower as the distance increases. So while my 5k time is pretty good, my 10k time is not quite so good, my half marathon is not bad, and as soon as I'm up to marathon and beyond distance, I'm plodding pretty average. Bottom line is, in shoes like this, once I'm out there for more than half an hour, the physics of 100 kilos crashing to the ground thousands of times, it just starts to add up. My joints, my muscles, my running form is all good, but there's a limit to the pounding that I can take. But this is designed to absorb that pounding and then return the energy. In fact, I've had a little taste of that because I ran a Hyrox event recently, not in my regular shoes. Instead, I tried Pumas, not quite as extreme as the Nike, but still a highly cushioned carbon-plated shoe. There's only 8k of running in that event, but it is broken up by exercise stations that you want your legs to be as fresh as possible for when you get to. In those, I found that worked. So these might be made for someone half my size, but might still help me anyway.
We're here at the race. My original thinking was that this would be an opportunity for me to run with immense speed and prowess and maybe set a really good time. But I am not feeling like doing that. My legs are still very heavy after Hyrox, which was less than a week ago. In fact, they actually are sore to the touch. I've had what do you call it? We just eat a lot. Is that like a deload week? We've eaten a lot of food this week. A lot of Ben and Jerry's. Had a Burger King last night.
Did you?
Yeah. You were out. I don't feel good. In a way, maybe that's a good thing because the whole point of this is, do these shoes work for a, average kind of person? I feel very, very average today. I mean, if I went under 45 minutes today feeling like this, that'd be insane. I don't know. I don't feel very well. The other thing is that in my head, when I put them on, planning for this, everybody else would be really intimidated and think, oh, wow.
What you got in there?
Doom has arrived. But now I'm just worried that I'm going to put them on and look like a bit of a dick.
Genuinely, I was 95% convinced I would not start that race. I felt absolutely appalling, but I did. And here's what happened. Actually, first, let me explain what I was looking for. My current 10K personal best is 42 minutes 36 set at my local duck pond when I was in the best running shape of my life a couple of years ago. Plan is to beat that later this year at some stage. Here, had I felt good, then maybe a 43, 44 minute, but feeling rough, I thought sub 45 would be great. That is a 4-minute 30-kilometer pace. I figured there was no way I was in shape to go actually quick, but it would be useful to report back on how I felt to run in the shoes. The first 3K, I did it in 4-minute kilometer pace dead. I hadn't been watching my watch, but a guy beside me said as we were jogging along, "Oh, are you looking for 39s too?" I was like, whoa, no, I checked my watch and slowed myself down for the next couple of K. But I wrote that off as just the placebo effect, or the pink SIBO. A couple of people had already commented on how bright the shoes were, so I felt almost compelled to whiz along. So I got to the turnaround at 5K in a few seconds over 20 minutes. That's a great 5K time for me on its own. In fact, if you followed my parkrun videos, you'll know that I was in the 23, 24-minute range just a few months back. Interesting point here, these shoes are not made for going around tight corners. Here is where it starts to get cool. Second half of the race. Legs are tired from high rocks the week before. I'm not feeling great, and I just run a 20-minute 5K. So at this stage, I'm expecting everything to start slowing down dramatically. Here's the best way to describe it. And I'm not a running coach, I'm self-taught, which basically means I make it up as I go along. But it's what I do. So I try and visualize my feet moving in a cycle, a bit like they would on my bike. So my foot lands under my body, passes under me, comes up behind me, comes over the top, and then lands again. But when I tire, that changes. As my foot passes under me, it does not spring up behind me because the muscles that are required to do that are pounded to bits. Instead, I feel like I have to sort of drag it forward, and consequently it ends up landing out in front of me. My circle is flattened, and I'm now landing on my heel out ahead of myself, which is not only high impact, it also decelerates me each stride. It's why I can run a 20-minute 5K, but have had no chance of stringing together two to make a 40-minute 10K. But in this race, I was actually very aware that just wasn't happening. At 6, 7, 8 kilometers done, I was tired, but I was very aware that I was able to maintain my sort of cyclical movement. My final kilometer was a 4:20, but my legs felt good. I just slowed down because there was nobody else around me at that point. I'd already got from the run what I wanted. I was just jogging to the finish at that stage.
I don't even know if that can be right. I still feel like someone who 10 hours ago had 2 burgers and 20 nuggets.
41 minutes, 40 seconds. That's a 4-minute, 8-second kilometer pace at 100 kilos, fueled by Burger King and feeling rough as hell. As someone that used to run parkrun slower than that, I can't quite believe it, but I might now be on track to run under 40 minutes this year. And there's no question these will help. My plan is to only wear them for important races, 10K to half marathon, which is really only a couple of times a year at most. They won't work at my local parkrun because it's just too twisty a course. All this spongy, narrow heel would be a disaster around that route. They also won't work for me, I don't think, above half marathon, because at some stage beyond 2 hours, my form will break down no matter how good the shoe is absorbing the shock. And if I start running in this with poor technique, I'll end up injured. And in the meantime, I'll continue wearing exactly what I always have done to make sure that my feet and my technique stays as solid as possible, so that when I put these on, I can capitalize on them the most. Will they work for you? I have absolutely no idea. My guess is you need to have pretty good feet that don't require much support, good technique, and a reasonable understanding of how to run, and be going at a reasonable pace to take advantage of them. If they'd existed back when I was doing my 1 hour plus 10Ks, would they have helped me then? No, I'd probably have ended up sat in the first aid tent getting an ice pack on my ankle while trying to convince myself it was okay because at least they came with a free bag. But now, they are going to get me sub 41 10K in the near future. When you add that to the free bag, money well spent. If you've got any questions, stick them in the comments down below. For exclusive content and access to the podcast, see my Patreon link in the description.
You're looking
Danny
at me?
DeVito. Sorry, what are you doing there?
Isn't that him? Is that Taxi? You're looking at me when he's in the mirror.
Taxi, the sitcom.
Oh,
Okay, with Danny DeVito
wrong thing.
and Christopher Lloyd from the late 70s, early 80s. okay, is
Not the
not
film.
the same as taxi driver. If your name is Gary or Elon, my apologies for any offence. And if you plan to be at my next duck pond race and compete in the old man category, you now know what awaits.
Doom.